we are back. Welcome to my preview and predictions for Game Week 2 in La Liga. A league that I feel like I should be calling the League of Red Cards after what we experienced on Game Week 1. Unbelievably, at the end of the third match of the La Liga season, we had 4 red cards already. A ridiculous start to the La Liga season. But as always, before we get into it, if you haven't done so already, please do consider dropping a like on this video if you enjoy all of my prediction series and share it with a friend to get more people involved. If you are new around here, please do consider subscribing with notifications turned on. We're doing La Liga and Premier League every single week on this channel. And if you want access to even more predictions from myself, including now all 5 of the top major leagues, you can do so by becoming a member of the channel, clicking the join button at the bottom of your screen right now. My predictions for game weeks 1 in the Bundesliga and Serie A will be available over the course of the morning for members only, so make sure you are getting involved. As for today, though, these are the 10 fixtures taking place in La Liga over the course of this weekend. And I am aware that there is a bonus fixture this week. We have got Celta Vigo taking on Real Betis at midweek. I think it's on Wednesday evening. My community prediction for that will be up tomorrow morning after the Betis game tonight, and obviously Celta Vigo playing tomorrow. So once those games have been concluded, we will then post a community post for that match on Wednesday. But without any further ado, let's just get straight into it. And we do start with Real Betis taking on Deportivo Alaves. Real Betis, of course, one of the sides I got spot on last week. Not many of you backed me when I said that Betis would Betis would draw 1-1 with Elche, but that is exactly the way it went. Elche, of course, getting that late equaliser. But despite only having 30% possession in the match, Real Betis were the dominant force throughout, certainly when it comes to chances. On the flip side, you then have the Alaves result, where an even later goal from Tenaglia meant that they got the 2-1 win, which is really annoying because they've done 1-1 in that match against Levante as well. It was a 92nd minute winner from Tenaglia to give Alaves the win, which means they actually start this game higher than Real Betis in the league table. Now, coming into this, it is obvious that I think most people aren't going to be surprised. Real Betis are considered the strong favourites for this match. However, the head-to-head record is actually pretty good in the away side's favour coming into this. Alaves are unbeaten in their last 5 matches against Real Betis, and they won here 3-1 last season as well. So definitely do not rule out Alaves in this one. When it comes to the team news, Real Betis are going to have Nathan available to them after he was suspended for game week 1. No fresh concerns for Alaves. To be honest, I do think it would be foolish not to go for Real Betis in this one because they are the home side. They want to make a good start to their home league season. But like I said, you've been warned about that head-to-head record and how strong it is in favour of Alaves. But I am going to go for a 2-1 victory to Real Betis. On to Saturday, and we start off with 2 sides who both lost at home in game week 1. Mallorca losing 3-0 at home to Barcelona, having 2 players sent off in the process. I told you we'd get to those red cards. Celta Vigo, though, were on the receiving end of what I think was the biggest upset of game week 1, losing 2-0 at home to Getafe. That is an unbelievable result for Getafe. Obviously, we'll get to them in the final prediction of the day, but it's a really, really poor start to the season for Celta Vigo. Naturally, when it comes to the team news in this one, we've got to talk about those 2 red cards for Mallorca, with both Morlanes and Miriki both getting sent off against Barcelona. Obviously, they will miss this game through suspension. There are no fresh concerns for Celta Vigo coming into this, but given how poor they were last week, given the result, you would have to expect the manager to make some changes to the starting lineup, unless he's just going to chuck them back out there and say, come on, now do better. But obviously, they've now got to go to a tough away game here against Mallorca. To be fair, though, I do say that Celta Vigo did win both matches against Mallorca last season. And when you consider that combined with the suspensions, you'd probably still have to say Celta Vigo come into this game as favourites. I mean, both these sides start the day in the relegation zone as well. So anything could happen. But I do think Mallorca, when you consider they obviously did keep Barcelona to just 3 goals with 9 men, they do have a chance of getting a result here. So I'm actually going to go for a draw, and I'm going to go for 1-1. But like I said, I do think Celta Vigo probably just slight favourites. Next on Saturday, it is Atletico Madrid taking on Elche. And well, for Atletico Madrid, we spoke about the poor form they had against Espanyol. Not only did that poor run of form continue, it actually got worse, because after 4 consecutive draws against them, they lost on match day 1 to Espanyol. Big result for Espanyol. 2-1 defeat for Atletico Madrid. For Elche, as we've already mentioned, they got that 1-1 draw against Real Betis. Unsurprisingly, the history of this fixture is a lot more in Atletico Madrid's favour than like we spoke about with Espanyol last week, with Atletico winning all but one of the last 10 meetings between these sides in La Liga. Although it should be noted that the one was actually the last time these two sides met, with Elche winning at home 2 seasons ago when they got relegated. But like I say, Atletico Madrid had won the previous 9 before that one. In terms of the team news, obviously Atletico have got a lot of new signings available to them, but one of them may be missing from this one, with Alex Baena picking up an injury which could see him miss this game and the final game before the international break. No other concerns for them, and like I say, they've got a lot to call upon coming into this one. For Elche, no fresh concerns. For them, they're probably just going to be looking for another solid defensive performance. I spoke about how good they were in the La Liga 2 last season defensively. It's a big ask, though, to go to Atletico Madrid and pull off a result. Personally, I don't see any other result than Atletico Madrid win here, but I don't see them going crazy and running away with it. I'm just going to go for a nice safe 2-0 to Atletico Madrid. The final game on Saturday, rather boringly, already sees the league leaders Barcelona, the defending champions, in first place after just 1 game. They are now travelling to the League 2 champions in Levante, the 2 league winners of last season, going head-to-head here on game week 2. And speaking of head-to-head, the head-to-head between these two sides have been kind of crazy the last few times they've met. It was 3-2 here to Barcelona the last time they met here. The season before that, it was 3-3. So expect to see some goals in this one. It always tends to get a little bit crazy between these two sides. As we've already mentioned, Levante, of course, went down to that 92nd minute goal from Alaves on game week 1. And obviously, again, as we've already mentioned, Barcelona victorious over a 9-man Mallorca last week. In terms of the team news coming into this, I actually can't see any fresh concerns for either side coming into it. I think we could see potentially a little bit of rotation for Barcelona as they try out a couple of their other new players. For Levante, I would expect near enough the exact same lineup coming into this one. It's a big ask for them. As I said, expect there to be goals in this one. Obviously, we have got Barcelona as the favourites for it, but I can definitely see Levante nicking themselves at least 1 goal here. So I'm going to go for a 3-1 victory to Barcelona. On to Sunday, and Sunday starts off with Osasuna taking on Valencia. Osasuna, to be fair to them, yes, they did lose 1-0 to Real Madrid on game week 1, but to be honest, I don't think that's a really bad result. Obviously, going to the Bernabeu, getting a decent defensive display in. They did lose only to a penalty, and yes, despite the theatrics from Mbappe, it still was a penalty, but I still think that's a pretty decent result. They're going to be coming up against a Valencia side who, despite being the better team against Real Sociedad last week, certainly if you look at the statistics, fell to one of those old football cliches of that you're most vulnerable when you've just scored. And after pushing and getting the go-ahead goal, straight away, Real Sociedad equalised and the game finished 1-1, annoyingly for me, as I did 1-0 to Valencia. But I think it does mean that both sides are going to be coming into this relatively confident, so we'll see where this one pans out. In terms of the actual team news coming into this, Osasuna are going to be without their left-back Bretones. He was sent off in the final minute of the game against Real Madrid when the game was basically already over. For Valencia, I don't see any concerns for them from last week coming into this one. In the last 7 meetings, though, between these two sides, there has been no winning margin by more than 1 goal. So I'm just like, all the matches in the last 7 have been like 2-1, 1-0, 3-2, etc. There hasn't been a margin bigger than 1 goal in the last 7. And both matches last season ended in draws. So there is very little to split between these sides over the past few seasons. It was 0-0 in Valencia. It was 3-3 at Osasuna last season. So honestly, coming into this, based on what we saw from these two sides last week, I genuinely believe that all 3 results are possible coming into this one. So as you know, when I don't know, I just go down the middle and I go for a 1-1 draw, because I think on the balance of play, that is just about right. If I had to pick a favourite, I'd probably just go in favour of Valencia. On to the evening games on Sunday. Then in the first of those, see Sociedad taking on Espanyol. As we've literally just mentioned, Sociedad, of course, getting the 1-1 draw with Valencia last week. Espanyol, as we know, getting that victory over Atletico Madrid on match day 1. Now, if we're also being strict in terms of the rules, I thought it's been a very controversial week regarding free kicks. If you watch any of my Premier League coverage, Espanyol actually should have beaten Atletico Madrid 2-0 because there were some Atletico Madrid players in the front of that wall for Julian Alvarez's free kick. But regardless, Espanyol, of course, still got the victory throughout. Unfortunately, Espanyol's record against Atletico Madrid is much better than their record against Real Sociedad, with Real Sociedad actually winning the last 5 games in a row against Espanyol. So you've got to consider Sociedad to be the early favourites coming into this one. It was a 2-1 victory for them last season. No fresh concerns for either side coming into this one. But Espanyol do have a new signing that they could call upon in Koleosho from Burnley, who I actually personally think is a really decent player. I'd be interested to see how he gets on in La Liga. Will he make his debut in this match? We shall see. Regardless, though, even though I think Espanyol did great last week, their record against Sociedad is horrendous. They're travelling to Sociedad for this match. You've got to say Sociedad are going to be the favourites for this one. And to be honest, I kind of like a repeat scoreline from last season. So I'm going to go for a 2-1 victory to Real Sociedad in this one. That then takes us to Villarreal and Girona, who will be playing at the exact same time as the Sociedad Espanyol game. You've got to say, Villarreal have bagged themselves a very, very nice start to the season. At home to promoted side Real Oviedo last week, picking up a 2-0 victory. And now a second home game in a row against a Girona side who, unlike what I thought, have exactly carried on from where they left off last season, having a horrendous opening day, losing 3-1 at home to Rayo Vallecano. So for Villarreal, it's an absolutely fantastic start to the season. 2, in theory, very nice and easy home games. Once again, we're going to have to talk about red cards when it comes to this fixture, though, because Villarreal did have the advantage against Real Oviedo, because Oviedo did have a player sent off early prior to Villarreal's 2 goals. For Girona, it just all went wrong for their goalkeeper, Gazzaniga, giving away a penalty, getting sent off for it. Penalty was converted, and of course, as we mentioned, they ended up losing 3-1. That said, the red card and the penalty was for Vallecano's 3rd goal. So they were already losing anyway. It's been a very, very poor start to the season once again for Girona. And if we're being honest, I don't think it's going to get much better going into this one. In terms of the team news, no real concerns for Villarreal coming into this one. For Girona, obviously, Gazzaniga is going to be suspended following his red card last week, but they've got a bunch of injuries as well, for the likes of Abel Ruiz and Donny van der Beek as well. I just don't really think there's going to be too many issues for Villarreal. I said there was no fresh concerns. It actually looks like Gerard Moreno could be missing for this one. I missed that in my notes initially. So potentially no Gerard Moreno for Villarreal, but a lot more absentees for Girona coming into this one. To be fair, Girona did get a 2-2 draw here last season, and the season before that, they did win at Villarreal. So take this prediction with a slight pinch of salt. Girona do have a good record in this fixture, but I feel like I have to go for Villarreal here, and I'm going to go for another 2-0 victory to the host side there. Finally, on Sunday then, it is Real versus Real, as it is Oviedo taking on Madrid. Personally, though, I just don't think there is too much to really say about this one. Obviously, as we already mentioned, Oviedo went down to 10 men very early on in their match against Villarreal. So we don't really know how good or bad they necessarily played because we didn't get that full reflection of how good they can be with a full complement. To be honest, losing 2-0 with 10 men away to a Champions League side, I don't think is too bad a result. Obviously for Real Madrid, we've already spoken about their performance against Osasuna. It was a penalty. Obviously it was a penalty, but overall, not a great performance from Real Madrid. They're trying to lay down a marker for the opening game of the season at home, and winning 1-0 with a penalty is not exactly the sort of thing to fill their fans with confidence, especially when they saw how comfortable Barcelona won on opening day. So it's going to be a potentially interesting one. What I would say is in terms of the team news, Real Madrid do have a couple of their injured players back and available for this one. However, there will still be no Jude Bellingham, no Ferland Mendy, and no Eduardo Camavinga. For Oviedo, Reina is going to be suspended for this one following his red card last week. Also, interestingly, I can't talk about head-to-head records. I love to do head-to-head records on these series. This is Oviedo's first time in La Liga for 25 years. So any head-to-head record between these two sides is completely and utterly irrelevant because they've not faced each other for a quarter of a century. So I've just got to look at it and face value and say Real Madrid are surely the favourites for this one. I'm going to go for 3-0, but that is with the expectation that they do perform better than they did against Osasuna last week. Could I see an upset happening here? Maybe, but I think it's too early in the season to say Oviedo are going to start getting results at home to Real Madrid. But we'll see. I still think Real Madrid take it comfortably. Finally then, we have two games on Monday night, and the first of those sees Bilbao taking on Vallecano. This one, I think, has the potential to be a really, really entertaining game. Bilbao got a 3-2 victory over Sevilla last week. Vallecano, as we've just mentioned, got the 3-1 win away at Girona last week, and they backed it up with a victory in the Europa Conference League qualification stages last night. What's important to note about that Europa game is they did rest the vast majority of their starting lineup and still got the victory anyway. So in terms of their key players, they're going to be well rested and ready for this game, especially considering it's being played on Monday night as well. It's still a tough fixture for them going to Bilbao. In terms of Bilbao, they, of course, have yet another potential injury problem for Nico Williams, although the reports I'm seeing are suggesting that he is going to be fit and available for this one. Outside of that, I don't see any real concerns for either sides coming into it. For Bilbao, I think they're going to be looking for a better defensive display. I think Sevilla played pretty well last week, but they're going to want to improve on those 2 goals conceded. Personally, though, I don't think it's going to happen because I think Vallecano are playing some very, very good stuff at the moment. Obviously, I've still got Bilbao as favourites going into this. And with Vallecano only having a 1-goal lead going into their second leg of Europa Conference League qualifying, we could potentially see them sacrifice this game to guarantee that they do qualify for Europe this season. I'm going to go for a Bilbao win, but I'm actually going to go for back-to-back 3-2s. Because like I say, I do like the way Vallecano have started the season. Ultimately, though, Bilbao should be getting the victory. And then finally, we have Sevilla taking on Getafe. As we've literally just mentioned, Sevilla were the recipients of that 3-2 defeat to Bilbao last week. And as we mentioned way back at the start of the video, Getafe with, in my opinion, the result of last weekend, a 2-0 win away to Celta Vigo. And when you look at that now, you've got to say they've got a chance of repeating the trick here against Sevilla. As I've just mentioned, though, Sevilla did play very well against Bilbao last week, created a lot of chances and obviously scored their 2 goals. And also the big positive for Sevilla coming into this is they do have a good record against Getafe. In the last 3 meetings, Sevilla haven't even conceded a single goal to Getafe. It was a 1-0 victory for them in this fixture last season. The other good news for both sides, no fresh concerns for either of them after last week's performances. So to be honest, I imagine we're going to see the exact same starting lineups from both sides coming into this one. Normally, I would go for that Sevilla win, but after last week, I feel like you've got to give Getafe a shout here. I really do. We'll see, though. Obviously, Sevilla have to be considered the favourites, but I do want to give Getafe a result here. So this may surprise a few of you, but I'm actually going to end this video with a 2-2 draw between Sevilla and Getafe. If I was going to say an outright favourite prediction, it would probably be 2-1 to Sevilla. But hey, I see a result like that. I want to see it repeated, so I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw. As always, let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. But before we leave it, let's see what you guys have been voting all week when it comes to these La Liga predictions, because here are your community predictions. The standout ones for me have got to be, firstly, 73% Sevilla. None of you backing my thought of Getafe getting, well, not none of you, 20% of you backing Getafe to do something in that fixture. 44% going for Celta Vigo to win away at Mallorca after that 2-0 defeat last week. Obviously, the main favourites, Atletico, Barcelona, Villarreal, Real Madrid. A lot of you thinking that that one is going to go that way. But again, that very first one, 77% think Real Betis are going to get the win over Alaves. Only 4% backing Alaves to go back-to-back away at Betis tonight. That is going to be it for today's video. Let's put my predictions back on the screen for you right now. As always, thank you very much for watching. We'll be back same time next week, so I'll see you there.